Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Matilda. If you're new here, how did it take you so long to find me? So I'm a Singaporean-based creator and I typically post different videos talking about home and living, struggles, and life and lessons. So I today wanted to talk about the true cost of being a digital nomad, and that my experience so far in the past 3 months has been amazing. Being a digital nomad has unlocked so many opportunities for me to create and collaborate and also experience a different taste of life. So I want to share some of the costs that I've experienced in my time here and maybe sprinkle a little bit of tips for you guys so you know how to navigate the space if you're intending to become a digital nomad. I'd like to share a little bit more about what I do because there are many kinds of digital nomads out there. So I would like to try and categorize them accordingly. So firstly, you have the digital nomads who are actually tied to a company but they're allowed to work anywhere in the world. And you have your freelancers who are working, project basis, doing odd jobs here and there, and they could be located anywhere in the world as well. And lastly, you have your business owners who own businesses and operate them from whichever country they're in, or maybe they don't even have an office that's tied to them. That's why they're able to work from anywhere. So for today, my experience will be mine alone, and I don't speak for everyone else who is also a digital nomad. But for me personally, I'm a digital nomad and content creator where I'm able to create content from wherever I am, like example what you're seeing right now on YouTube, or I'm also on Instagram and TikTok. And I'm also trying social media management, content creation, or even user-generated content. And I'll leave it all in the details under my website as well if you're interested to see the work that I do. So yeah, that's really the experience that I'll be speaking from today as a digital nomad and a content creator who is largely based in Southeast Asia. So a couple of disclaimers as well. I probably won't be discussing taxes and also your daily expenses because I find that it really is dependent on the individual and also on your country's regulations. I know that for Singapore, for me personally, I paid my taxes this year for last year's work when I was still in a corporate situation, but the next year moving forward, I will be reporting my income as a solopreneur, like a solo entrepreneur, and probably that will look very different from a year now. Maybe I'll do a video during the tax season next year to give better advice, but right now I probably won't be talking too much about it. Also in terms of covering F&B expenses as well, and even shopping as well, it really is very different for each person, and maybe I can give some tips in terms of that maybe you can look out for, but I won't necessarily be advising on the costs. Share my situation as well. I started this digital nomad life in May earlier this year, so it's about my 4th month now going into it, and so far in the 4 months I've lived in both Bangkok and Bali. So this is my 2nd month in Bangkok, and I think I'm a lot more informed now in terms of how to share about the cost of living and also the standard of living as well across these two countries. And also I'll share my Singapore experience because I was largely based there before. Let's talk about the first big cost that you will incur as a digital nomad no matter where you go, and that is your rental costs. So for context, for Singapore, I used to stay in a mezzanine shophouse loft, and I'll plug a couple of pictures here or some videos as well of my space, which I rented for a good 3.5 years. And this one, the rent came up to about 2.3 per month SGD. So all the prices that I'll be sharing today will actually largely be in SGD because I'm mainly operating in that currency. And yeah, so the rent was about $2,300. Whereas in Bangkok, in my first month, I was with my fiance, and our space, which was really near to From Phong station, was about 600 Singapore dollars per person, which we rented on Airbnb. But if you're a solo entrepreneur, that will be about 1,200. Moving on to Bali, I actually stayed in a guest house, and this guest house is basically a enlarged villa where there are about 8 different units, and we share the same amenities such as the pool and also the co-working space within it. So this specific space came up to about 700 Singapore dollars per person, and it was quite near the city centre, which is the newest trendy neighborhood, which is Canggu. So it was located in Barawa, which is very close to Canggu, and everything was quite close to our fingertips in terms of the beaches as well. That, if you're a solopreneur, would have been about 1,500 SGD, and that was for Bali. And now finally I'm in Bangkok again, and I think it's about the same price. It's been consistent the whole time, at least from what I am hunting for. I'm looking for a full suite condominium apartment complex where I have the gym, I have a pool, I have a co-working space, and at least some outdoor areas where I can frolic and kind of, chill and just spend more time within the apartment complex. So the prices typically for a good neighborhood is about 1,200 Singapore dollars, and that's currently what I'm paying right now for this apartment that you're looking at me in. Because of my nature of my work as a content creator, most times I'm actually traveling back to Singapore to film some content, be it for brands who are products or services, and that means that some of the cost that I would definitely rack up on is my transport, which is flights. So there is no direct train from Singapore to Bangkok or the other way around, or even Bali to Singapore, and it's all by flights. And what I've realized after checking all of my receipts is that my flights usually range from $300 to $400 for a two-way trip from Singapore to Bangkok, and back. So it depends as well, because I found a hack recently that you should book your flights on the Tuesday. Apparently it is cheaper, and also you should check out Singapore Airlines, which is one of the best airlines in the world in terms of their flights, especially for Bangkok. So what I found was that for the flight back to Singapore from Bangkok, it was about $350, and it came with extra baggage as well for 25 kg of luggage. So that was for Singapore Airlines, and I felt that wow, that was a really good steal. So another thing was that flights from Bangkok to Bali were a little bit more expensive. I had to fly there because I had a friend's birthday party, but that flight was about 400 to almost 500 SGD. And the reason why it's steep is because there aren't a lot of flights coming from Bangkok to Bali, but there's more flights coming from Singapore to Bali, because Singapore is one of the main central, airports that everyone has to kind of stop before they move forward. So yeah, that's something to look out for, is to check your flight comparison websites, like your Expedias, your Skyscanners, your Google Flights, to get the best deals ever. And also to book on a Tuesday. I'm not so sure why, but sometimes some airlines like Scoot, they have Scoot Tuesdays, or I forgot what is the promotion called, but they have random promotions that you can find as well on these airlines. And it would be great if, before you even embark on this digital nomad journey, if you could get a credit card that you could spend on, and you can accumulate miles along the way too. Yeah, now that you've heard my whole spiel about flights, let's talk about the other modes of transport. So let's talk about Singapore. For Singapore, I know that I don't spend too much in terms of the public transport. Usually a trip would be about $1 to $2 per trip, and that if I were traveling every single day on the trains in Singapore, it would have been about $200 to $300. I think in Bangkok, I find that the best way for transport is actually to take the BTS, because I find that there is so much traffic jam, especially during certain hours of the day. I know the worst ones that I've experienced is definitely the 6 p.m. to 7:30 to 8 p.m. period, where it's completely jammed up. The roads are, you can't even move at all, so it's quite bad. But yeah, I think if you are in Bangkok, definitely go for the BTS or the MRT train stations. They really have very affordable prices for the BTS, and you can even get a rabbit card as well, which is a tourist card. You just need to keep topping up the money. In Singapore, of course, it's a lot more seamless. You can just use your Apple Pay and just pay for your transport. In Bali, it's a little bit different, because in Bali, there's not much public transport that's available or easily available to tourists, especially if you're going to touristy areas to stay in. But usually in Bali, how I would get around is to take bikes, like motorbikes, or even their Grab cars. Or usually each bike ride it's about only $1 Sing, and I think that it's really very affordable. If you're getting me to a certain place and I'm just staying there for the whole day, it's a lot more worth it in that sense. Whereas if you're going for even further places such as Uluwatu or even Ubud, which is about 2 hours away from the city centers, you might want to invest in a car instead. And usually these prices range around $10 Sing dollars to about $20 Sing. So all of these prices actually pale in comparison to Singapore prices, because Singapore prices are really expensive. Like a 20-minute car ride could take me $30 to even $40, especially during peak hour. It's a lot more difficult to deal with the prices of cars in Singapore. This is not a hack and this is not a tip, but to be honest, if you're someone that honestly just goes out once a day, I think either Bangkok or Bali would be suitable, because if you're spending most of the day working, I think it's only a few dollars in a day that you're spending outside and on transport. So yeah, I think that's really just to wrap up the whole flight and transport situation within Southeast Asia and the clear differences in terms of the pricing. So another thing as a digital nomad that you might want to consider leaving your home country for would be, okay, I'm a digital nomad that needs a space to work in and maybe I need a gym. So usually my only hack is really to find properties that have both already. So be really intentional when you're property hunting, especially if you know that you're going to be spending a lot of time working during the day. So I would suggest getting in either Bangkok, Bali, to find a space that has a co-working space already, so you have that office space ready for you. And also to maybe, I know you can't do property visits or apartment hunting physically, but it might be a good idea to check out the renting platforms to see how many units are available for these said condos that you've kind of identified. Because why I say that is that you will want the space to be a little bit more empty. So especially in Bangkok, right, I find that there's so many condo apartment complexes and most of them are actually not filled to the brim yet, which is good for you, by the way, because that means that all of the amenities will be kind of untouched, kind of new, and there won't be as many people that will crowd the space. So I think that would be a good hack, which is to check out how many of these properties or how many of these listings are available per condominium. I know that the place that I stayed in May, it was pretty much empty. Like there was not a lot of people there, not a lot of families, not a lot of digital nomads. And whereas here I'm in the next apartment and I find that there's so many more listings, there is so many more people here, and I find that there's a lot of people that crowd the co-working space. So that's something that you may want to consider as well. If you're really in need of a co-working space, then maybe you can do extra checks just to make sure that you have a space to work in. Because you can always work from home and I guess have a table set up, or you can work from the couch or the bed, etc. So about the gym as well, I think that gyms tend to be a bit expensive depending on where you are. So in Singapore, it's about $150 I know per month, and that's usually with a commitment kind of plan, or it can get as low as $90 per month, but that's if you sign a 1-year contract with the gym. And it really depends on how long you want to stay at a certain place. If you're only there for a month, why would you be spending $90 every month, right? It doesn't make sense. So in Bali, I remember my fiance and I were checking out the class packages, the gym prices, and I think in the end he paid about $150 for 1 month unlimited visits to a certain gym in Canggu. And the reason why he even chose it was because it was so close to our apartment. Like he could walk there about 10 minutes. So I think that's why he really wanted like that gym space. And also our guest house did not have a gym that was already inbuilt. Comparing it to my Bangkok experience, the apartment building that I've chosen already has a fitted gym. I just need to avoid the peak hours and the timings that people want to go to the gym, like around after work hours, like after 6 p.m. or in the morning, around 8 a.m. It's usually crowded then. But if I wanted to, I could avoid them and just go during lunchtime or go during very odd hours like 2 p.m. So yeah, the gym is something that could be an additional cost that you may want to factor in as well for yourself. Next up, swimming pool space, I guess. In Bali, for most of the guest houses, it's not really facility, a proper pool. The proper pools there, you probably can only find them at beach clubs. And in Bangkok it's different though. In Bangkok, my pool here is beautiful. It's almost like the Olympic swimming pool size, and I think it's great and conducive for people who want to really train up on their swimming. So yeah, those are things that you may want to consider in terms of the space as well. I think Bangkok has more space for proper facilities such as this, whereas in Bali it's small little pools that you may not get the best value out of. Of course, in Singapore as well, it really depends on where you're staying. I was staying in a shop house, so I had no amenities. I had no gym, no pool, no security, no nothing. If I were to stay in a different apartment, maybe I would have access to a gym, but then again, it depends on how busy and hectic and how occupied the condo apartment really is. I mentioned that I didn't want to talk about the day-to-day expenses because I think it's a bit difficult for people to relate in terms of the prices, because your consumption may be very different from mine. But I guess I could use coffee as an example. So the coffee that I've had in Singapore, if you're doing it even in a chain one, like such as Starbucks or Hugs Coffee, in Singapore that would be about $5 to $6 minimally for a good cup of coffee. Whereas in Bangkok, I know that there are very good coffee chains such as the Chatomware and also the Cafe Amazon, which is only about $2 for a full cup of coffee. Really great value for money. And for Bali, it's around the same price as Singapore, I would say, because usually they don't have the coffee chains that we expect to see, such as like the Cafe Amazon or even Chatomware, but they have more of like the cafe kind of coffee, which is like $5, or if you're lucky you can find one that's like $3 or $2. So yeah, it really depends on where you're at and where you're consuming your coffee. In terms of the shopping as well, Bangkok shopping is beautiful. The local pieces and the local brands are actually very cheap, price friendly, and a simple skirt and top could be $20 each, whereas in Singapore it's so much more different because local brands tend to price themselves on more premium fabrics, so their tops and pants might be minimally $30 to $40. So yeah, it really depends once again on your consumption levels. If you're into that, of course, designer stuff I won't be talking about. I'll be talking about just like the local designers. I think it's a good idea to be investing in a yearly travel insurance plan, because I think that would be in the long run cheaper as compared to your monthly ones, or if you buy them every single month that you're in a different country. I think those single plans are very taxing for you to also think about and having to keep filling up the forms. So it's a good idea to do your research in terms of which one has the best coverage, and I think really think about the claims as well and how easy it is to process a claim. Maybe read up on Reddit and check out all of the different options that you have before committing to a yearly plan. For me personally, I went with Forward and I haven't personally had to claim anything just yet, but I am just praying for a good experience. But yeah, that's on insurance costs. I also want to preface, right, I'm a Singaporean, so my passport doesn't really need a lot of visas, so that's another cost that you may want to consider and also plan the timelines on. Just have a think about what kind of visa requirements are needed per country. I know Bali also has a visa on arrival that's available, or you can buy it online as well. I think this is about $15 SGD. I'm not really too sure, but please check it out and do your due diligence before going to any country as well. So yeah, I think I've pretty much come to the end of my video, and I hope that this video has somewhat helped you in terms of making a decision of whether or not you want to embark on this digital nomad journey. It's a very fulfilling one, it's a very fun one where you're able to travel and work from anywhere you want. And let me know if there's any other questions or topics that I should be discussing, and I would love to work on it in the next video. Thanks everyone, and see you in the next one. Bye!